Jaya Sri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda
Jaya Jaya Sri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda
Jaya Advaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda
Jaya Advaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda
Jaya Jaya Sri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda
Jaya Jaya Sri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda
Jaya Advaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda
Jaya Advaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda
Jaya Jaya Sri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda
Jaya Jaya Sri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda
Jaya Advaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda
Jaya Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda
If you want, you can come closer. If you want. You don't have to sit in the back. You're welcome to come closer. So I don't have to shout. Maybe they like to sit there because they can lean against the wall. I think that's the main thing. But it's okay, the wall will keep itself up. It won't fall down. Maybe we can have some light here.
You want front end?
No. So they told me that there is no specific place that you're reading, or nobody can remember where you're reading in Chaitanya Charitamrita. So I just picked a verse from the Madhya Lila, chapter 9, text number 159. And I'll read 158 as well. But 159 is on the board. And you don't need your cell phone. You can read it here. It's written here. Can everyone see it? Can you see it? Yes? No? You speak English?
Just about.
Can you see it? You have to say yes or no?
Yes.
Yeah? I don't know if you don't say anything.
And some speak French.
Okay, I'll speak English. Okay, so please repeat. My broken Bengali. My wife is from Bengal, so she will laugh. Kintu yadi latare sange ute upashaka.
That's not the verse. Nishitachara.
But you wrote the wrong verse. Oh no, sorry, it's me. I'm saying the wrong one. Okay, I'll try again. Nishithachara kutinati jivahim shana.
Nishitachara kutinati jivahim sana
Nishithachara kutinati jivahim shana.
Nishitachara kutinati jivahim sana
Lapa puja pratishtadi yata upashakagan.
Lapa puja pratishtadi yata upashakagana.
I guess you shorten the words so that it fits in the meter. How do you say lob? Right? Lob. Lob puja pratishtadi yat upashak gan.
Lapa puja pratishtadi yata
Lab. I don't know anything. Nishithachar kutinati jivahim sana.
Nishitachara kutinati jivahim sana
La puja pratishtadiyata upashakadan.
La puja pratishtadiyata upashakagana.
It's enough from my side.
Nishidhachara kutinati jiva himsana.
Nishitacha kuchinati vahimsana.
Labha puja pratishtati yata upashakagana.
Lava puja pratishtadiyata upashakagana.
Nishadachara kutinati jiva himshana.
Nishidachara kutinati vahimsana.
Lava puja pratishtadi yata upashakagana.
Lava puja pratishtadiyata upashakagana.
We can hear from the expert. You have to come closer.
Nishitachara kutinati jiva himshana.
Nishidachara kutinati vahimsana.
Labha puja pratishtadi jato upashakagana.
Lava puja pratishtadiyata upashakagana.
Nishidachara kutinati jiva himshana.
Nishidachara kutinati vahimsana. Lava puja pratishtadiyata upashakagana.
Nishidha achara.
Nishidhachara,
Behavior not to be exhibited
behavior not to be exhibited
by a person desiring
By a
person
person
desiring
to become perfect.
to become perfect.
I forgot to read the previous verse. Anyway, maybe I'll read it afterwards. Kutinati,
Kutinati,
diplomacy. Jiva himsana,
Vahimsana.
unnecessarily killing animals.
unnecessary killing animals.
You can translate simultaneously if you want. You can sit here if you want.
Oh, if there is enough. Il y en a combien qui parlent pas anglais? Bon, as you like.
And what is the answer? How many doesn't speak French?
C'est qui compte.
Okay, as you like, as you like.
There's only one,
Okay,
so we'll save time like that.
okay,
Otherwise, it's
no problem.
divided by two.
Then the class will just be short.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. Unnecessarily killing animals for the soul.
The soul,
Love. Profit according to material calculations.
profit according to material calculations.
Puja.
Puja,
Adoration achieved by satisfying
adoration achieved by satisfying
mundane people.
mundane people.
Pratishta adi.
Atishta Adi,
Becoming an important man
becoming an important man
in material calculations.
in material calculations.
And so on.
And so on.
Yata.
Yata.
All these.
All these
Upashaka. Unnecessary creepers.
unnecessary creepers.
You understand that word? Creeper. Do you know that word? It means plant. Maybe a plant can crawl against the wall. I don't know. Usually a creeper is something that crawls. Grand. Okay. Translation. Some unnecessary creepers growing with the bhakti creeper are the creepers of behavior unacceptable for those trying to attain perfection. And then they're listed. diplomatic behavior, animal killing, mundane profiteering, mundane adoration, and mundane importance. All these are unwanted creepers. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. There is a certain pattern of behavior prescribed for those actually trying to become perfect. In our Krishna consciousness movement, we advise our students not to eat meat, not to gamble, not to engage in illicit sex, and not to indulge in intoxication. People who indulge in these activities can never become perfect. Therefore, these regulative principles are for those interested in becoming perfect and going back to Godhead. Kutinati, or diplomatic behavior, cannot satisfy the Atma, the soul. It cannot even satisfy the body or the mind. The culprit mind is always suspicious. Therefore, our dealings should always be straightforward and approved by Vedic authorities. If we treat people diplomatically or duplicitously, our spiritual advancement is obstructed. Jiva himsana refers to the killing of animals or to envy of other living entities. The killing of poor animals is undoubtedly due to envy of those animals. The human form is meant for the understanding of Krishna consciousness, atatu brahma jigyas, for inquiring about the Supreme Brahman. In the human form, everyone has a chance to understand the Supreme Brahman. The so-called leaders of human society do not know the real aim of human life and are therefore busy with economic development. This is misleading. Every state and every society is busy trying to improve the quality of eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. This human form of life is meant for more than these four animal principles. Eating, sleeping, mating, and defending are problems found in the animal kingdom, and the animals have solved their problems without difficulty. Why should human society be so busy trying to solve these problems? The difficulty is that people are not educated to understand this simple philosophy. They think that advancement of civilization means increasing sense gratification. There are many religious propagandists who do not know how the ultimate problems of life can be solved. And they also try to educate people in a form of sense gratification. This is also jiva himsana. Real knowledge is not given, and religionists mislead the general populace. As far as material profits are concerned, one should know that whatever material profit one has must be abandoned at the time of death. Unfortunately, people do not know that there is life after death. Therefore, mundane people waste their time amassing material profit which has to be left behind at the time of death. Such profit has no eternal benefit. Similarly, adoration by mundane people is valueless, because after death one has to accept another body. Material adoration and titles are decorations that cannot be carried over to the next body. In the next life, everything is forgotten. All these obstructions have been described in this verse as unwanted creepers. They simply present obstacles for the real creeper, the bhakti lata. One should be very careful to avoid all these unwanted things. Sometimes these unwanted creepers look, and listen to this, this is very important, listen carefully. Sometimes these unwanted creepers look exactly like the bhakti lata creeper. They appear to be of the same size and the same species when they are packed together with the bhakti lata creeper. But in spite of this, the creepers are called upashak. Upashak. Upashak means weeds. Des mauvaises herbes. I know about that. I'm a gardener. A pure devotee can distinguish between the bhakti lata creeper and a mundane creeper. And he is very alert to distinguish them and keep them separate. So that's a very interesting verse and purport. So the whole world wants love. The peace movement, they say that they want. Make love, not war. Which is very...
That's so quaint.
huh? It's very relevant. Yeah, that's from the hippie days, but they are still... People are still advocating that we should make love, not war. But war is there. Still. In spite of all the efforts to avoid it, war is there. And it seems to be more and more. So what is the problem? Where did we go wrong? We want love, peace and love, but what is love? Maybe we don't know what is love. If we want mundane love, then we will also have the other side, which is war. Because mundane love basically means lust. And to enjoy our senses. So when we have one side in the material world, we will also have the other side. We can say we have love and hate. And you cannot separate them in the material world. So as long as we have material desires to enjoy without Krishna in this material world, there will also be war. And if we don't like that, we have to understand that we have made a mistake. We have turned away from Krishna, from God. And we need to acknowledge that. And then we can make progress. And there will still be war, the real war is actually inside. It's in our own heart. That's where the real war begins. Then you have a war with your wife, or your husband, your family, neighbors. Neighbor war is quite common. Right? I'm working as a gardener, paysagiste, and almost everyone has some neighbor war. Almost every single client, they have war with the neighbor. Everyone. And some people, they make a big wall just to, so they cannot see their face. I have some people. They spend so much money making a big fat wall. So there are big wars and there are small wars. And nobody really likes war. But it's there. And it's more terrible nowadays because we have weapons of mass destruction. So everyone is afraid, and basically has been afraid of that since 1945. Right? The Cold War. Prabhupada said we have cold and hot wars. And the cold wars will turn into hot wars. Cannot avoid it. It's the nature of this material world. And the only way we can avoid suffering is to get out of this material world altogether. Get out of here. We don't belong here. We think that this is our home. We build our house, establish ourselves. We become so attached to our situation. And finally, even if there's not a war, death will come and take away everything. And we know this. But we are spending a lot of energy trying to avoid thinking about death. And everything that goes along with that. Old age, disease, and so on. So Prabhupada says here, what is the problem to solve what is the difficulty in solving the problems of eating, sleeping, mating and defending? That is not a big problem to solve. You can see the birds every day eating, feeding their little babies. We have some birds living in our workshop because we left the door open. So they made a nest. They just moved in, they don't pay any rent. So they have their sleeping problem solved. Mating is not a problem. Eating, every day the mother bird flies in and out with the food. She doesn't have to go to the supermarket. And defending also. They don't need to create big tanks and artillery. They just have a beak. Very small defense system. Our modern society is basically an if you can try and translate this word, it's an overdevelopment of the mode of passion. So I'll just say a little bit about the modes of nature. There is the mode of goodness, passion and ignorance. So this is a way to understand the world. We need to know we can say if you read the Bhagavad Gita, it's like a map. And what is the main function of when you see a map in a village or a town? The most important thing on the map, what is that? That you first have to understand.
Where you are.
Exactly. And it says always, vous êtes ici, you are here. And there's a red circle. So, if you read the Bhagavad Gita, especially, that's a map. And that map can tell you where you are by understanding different things. First of all, we need to understand who we are, also where we are, but we need to understand who we are. And the Vedic scriptures say that we are, they give us negative and positive information. And maybe first we need to understand, you can understand the positive or the negative first, whatever. But the negative is that we are not this body. We are not man, woman, French, Danish, Indian, or even Hindu. That's a difficult one. Maybe. Or Christian, all these things. We are not. That means we are not this gross physical body made of gross elements that we can see and touch. That is not so difficult, at least in theory, to understand. Then we also understand that we are not this subtle body, which is our mind. And which is, we also identify with our mind. I am this, I am that. This is my religion. This is my type of music. This is my so on, so on. Philosophy. So we are not all this. We are eternal spirit souls. And we are servants of Krishna, of God. And the Bhagavad Gita explains this in so many different ways. And then we also need to know where we are. And I said that the modern society is an overdevelopment of the mode of passion. So the mode of goodness means maintenance, stability. Because this is also influencing our psychology, this mode of nature. So when there is creation, when we see creation, no, not creation, sorry, when we see things are maintained, the things are stable, this is the mode of goodness. You can see it in the seasons. The springtime is the mode of passion. Mode of passion means creation, propagation of children, sex life. Then there is the summer where everything is stable for some time. You grow your vegetable garden. In the springtime you spend a lot of time sowing and planting and weeding. And when the garden is established in the summer, it's stable for some time. And then in the autumn is the mode of ignorance. Everything is degrading. The leaves are withering, falling from the trees, and so on. So there is creation, maintenance, and annihilation or destruction. Passion, goodness, ignorance. So this modern society is in the mode of passion, also in the mode of ignorance, but the mode of passion is very prominent. You're building big skyscrapers, there's big business going on, and more and more and more. Economic development. And the economic development, what is the goal? Sense gratification. So we can enjoy. People are working very hard so they can enjoy. So formally, the standard of life used to be in the mode of goodness. That used to be the standard of advancement. Now the standard of advancement is in the mode of passion. If you don't have a bank account, there's some people who don't have a bank account still. If you don't have a bank account, you're nothing. The government don't consider it you important. If you're not contributing to the economic development. So it used to be that those who were most advanced, they were in the mode of goodness. And they were not engaged in economic development. They were engaged in other activities. They were the brahmanas. So the overall important goal of human society used to be self-realization. And the king was responsible for making sure that the citizens were engaged in religious activities, spiritual activities. You can see in France so many churches, so many cathedrals, even small villages like in Veuil, where we live. There is a big church, in Écueillé, everywhere. So people were very pious. And the kings used to be pious, of course, before they became degraded. What is that? There is famous French king, Saint Louis. I think there are more than one. But there's a famous Saint Louis who, I think from the 12th century, or I'm not sure, in the Middle Ages. And I heard that he was very attached to going to a certain monastery outside of Paris. We went there to visit one time when we were living in Paris, and there was a description on the wall how he would go to the monastery and serve the monks. Personally, he would serve them food, and then he would spill the food on his gorgeous royal cape, and the people would say, "Oh, you don't have to." The monks would say, "It's okay, you don't have to serve us like this." And he was famous to have said, he would say in French, "J'en ai d'autres. I have other capes. It's okay." So before people were, the king was much more pious. So now the leaders, they are just interested, the main thing is just economic development for the aim of sense gratification. And that is why the whole society is going to hell, to say it in plain words. Because the goal of life is not sense gratification. The goal of life is to understand who we are and make spiritual advancement, and we can never be happy unless we do that. No matter how much money we have, how many cars, how big our family and friend, how many friends we have. Ultimately, we have to leave everything behind. So how to do this? There's a practical method how to cultivate Krishna consciousness. And here is described how you should be just like a gardener. Those who grow plants, they know that we can say that there are three main activities in gardening and farming. What are these? Three main activities.
One is watering.
Plowing. Yes. We can say there are three main activities of maintenance.
That the weeds out.
Weeding, yeah. Weeding, watering, and manuring. Putting manure to improve the soil. Fertilization. So these three main activities. And that is the same in Krishna consciousness. We maybe also need to plow in our heart. We need to turn it over because there's so many bad things growing. Sometimes that's also part of weeding actually. Because you cannot weed a whole field by hand, so you plow it. And of course plowing is meant for the root to go deep. So we have to take out the bad weeds that come up together with the bhakti creeper. And here it says, Prabhupada says that only the pure devotee can see the difference between the bad weeds and the good plants. So what does that mean? That means we need to have a spiritual master who can guide us. He can say, this is unwanted. You have to get rid of this. And that can be embarrassing. So we need to accept that someone points out our mistakes. First of all, we accept, okay, I'm not perfect. And then we can make progress. Then we carefully, while we're cultivating the bhakti creeper, we carefully take away the bad weeds, so the bhakti creeper can grow strong. Then we need to water and fertilizing with the holy name, the association of devotees, sadhana, deity worship, Srimad Bhagavatam class, all these things. And in this way, the bhakti creeper, the plant of devotion, grows very strong. And when it's very strong, it's not vulnerable anymore. Well, it's less vulnerable. Just like we are growing peas, petit pois. And the pigeons, they eat it. And they eat everything. There's nothing left but this. So we have to protect the peas. We have to build a thing over it. Put a net. So in that way we have to protect our creeper of devotion, our devotional life. We have to protect it from so many things. Don't think that if you decide to become a devotee of Krishna, then people will leave you alone. You will be attacked from so many different sides. So we need to be prepared to protect our Krishna consciousness, and in this way we can solve all our problems. And not only our personal problems, because this is a movement of Sankirtan. And that means we are not a movement of becoming privately very advanced in spiritual life. We want to become advanced together. Just like Prahlad Maharaj, when he wants his demoniac father to go back to Krishna. So he is more concerned about others than himself. We should be concerned about, first of all, become Krishna conscious, practice Krishna consciousness seriously, and then we can help others. And in that way, we want to go back to Godhead, but not alone. We go back to Godhead together. So maybe there's some questions? Comments? Yeah.
Could you give an example of a weed that looks like the bhakti, lata, but is actually an artha?
Uh-huh.
It's
Well, you can say maybe that, let's say you see a spiritual movement and there's lots of wealth, maybe there's lots of brahmacharis, people joining. It looks very good, and we have seen that in ISKCON also. Thousands of people, 10,000s of disciples. And the guru is very rich. He can buy a few castles. We have seen that like this one. And money is coming in. Everything is going on nicely. It looks good. But there is something in the heart which is not corrected. And then after some time it stops. You can say the person or the leader, he, as we have seen also in ISKCON sometimes, in the good old days, left the movement because the bad weeds were not being taken out, and they were allowed to grow, so that they finally took over and strangled the bhakti creeper. And sometimes it may look good. That's my understanding, that things may look very good from the outside, but inside there's some problems that were not corrected. Maybe you can give an example also.
I think that's a very good example.
That's like a collective example of a community. Or you may have a community, on the other hand, which is not rich, which is, it may not look fantastic, but there is nice devotees. If you have to choose between the two, the last one is better. But if you can have both combined, that would be nice. Right? Just like Krishna, he is the one, number one. If you have many zeros, then if there is not Krishna, the one, it has no value. You have lots of money, lots of wealth, but Krishna is absent in your life. All that is not worth anything. But if you have just Krishna, the one, and you don't have all the zeros, it's very good. But if you can have Krishna and the zero, we can say that's Krishna and his energy. That is complete. And that is possible, but I think the tendency is that when you get wealth, power, fame, and so on, there's a tendency to become degraded. So that's a challenge. But there is power in the world, and somebody has to exercise it. And if it's not the devotees, the demons will do it. So, I mean, we're not there, but Prabhupada in the first canto of Bhagavatam, he definitely has a great vision of devotees running a country. If you read about, I'm not sure which, I think the chapter with Parikshit Maharaj punishing Kali, is that correct? So we have to become advanced, and when Krishna sees that you are becoming more advanced in Krishna consciousness, he will also give you more and more to manage. But there's a limit. You cannot manage the whole world. And we have to do the weeding every day so that we stay pure. What is that? Our motto is that purity is the force? Purity is the force. So if we want to remain a spiritual movement and not just a movement of having a lot of money and many temples and so on, if we really want to remain a spiritual movement, we should remain pure. Even though we get so many things in our hands to manage. Stay pure by practicing Krishna consciousness. Any other questions?
As a reflection in ourselves and also in others, it's always easy to find in others, that we can easily confuse goodness and ignorance. Sometimes we feel that we are in the mode of goodness because we just want to, I don't know, read, chant, or not associate too much with passionate people, passionate devotees, or some things like this. But sometimes subtly or unconsciously, we are actually avoiding to do service or to be at service of others. So sometimes we have to be careful because those two gunas, they are very easily differentiable from passion, but sometimes they can be confused within each other if we're not really honest with ourselves.
The mode of goodness and ignorance, they're both serene. They're very serene. But the serenity of the mode of ignorance is just dullness. You just want to sleep. The person in the mode of ignorance is very calm. Very, very calm. Especially if he smokes marijuana.
But easily they can feel that they are in the mode of goodness, Sometimes you can be really confused.
But the mode of goodness is described that all the gates of the body is illuminated. Where is that? What is that verse? The chapter about the modes of nature. So all the gates of the body will be illuminated in the mode of goodness. So if you experience that, and my understanding of being in the mode of goodness is you're balanced. So what does Krishna say about that? You cannot become a yogi if you work too much and if you work too little, and so on. If you sleep too much, too little. So
Eat too much.
eat too much or eat too little. So that means you also have to work. If you just find an excuse to not to work by some pretending that yes, I'm just chanting, but maybe you're just sleeping. So for me, mode of goodness is a balance. I don't know if you can say that. Sometimes you need to be a little passionate, even in the mode of goodness. In one sense, you need to, in the morning you have the morning program, the mode of goodness, practice Krishna consciousness. Then the day begins, it's work, it's the mode of passion. Again in the evening, some spiritual activity like that. Prabhupada, he didn't like to see his disciples just sit around all day. You had some?
Yeah. Thank you. Really nice class. Just something I get a little bit mixed up with sometimes is duplicity and diplomacy.
Mm-hmm.
So I know, as we progress, or we try to progress in our journey, tolerance is something we should develop and show. So sometimes, in a situation, whether it's devotees or non-devotees, sometimes you have to be a little bit diplomatic. So is that the degrees of being diplomatic versus being purely duplicitous?
I think the main point is to be straightforward. You should be honest. Devotees should be known as honest people. That, okay, he's a Hare Krishna, and we know he's honest. So that's also good preaching. If people get the impression that all these Hare Krishnas, they're not honest, it's very bad for ISKCON. So that's my understanding, that we should be honest.
Okay, so more about honesty. Sometimes.
I mean, personally, when I deal with people, I'm very honest. I'm a Hare Krishna. I don't try to hide it. That's another type of honestness, honesty. I'm not afraid to be a devotee. And my personal opinion is, if people don't like that I'm a devotee, and I show it, then I don't deal with them either. So then you have to be a little detached. You may not be able to be, if you are employed, for example, you may not be able always to express yourself as a devotee. So you can say that's a problem. I'm not an employee, so I'm independent, so I can choose. But yes, if you're an employee, it can be a challenge. But even when I was an employee and I went to job interviews, I always came with tilak, and you can see I'm a Hare Krishna. And if they didn't like that, if they had a real problem with that, I also didn't want, basically they didn't want to employ me. So we may be afraid that, if you're too much a devotee, then you may lose your job.
Is there sometimes a balance in that sometimes you can gauge that, okay, they may not be ready for a full tilak yet, but over time, maybe some of that ignorance...
Put a little dot.
Yeah, can be sort of,
Hindus, they always have something in the face. So, as you have an Indian body, then people don't have such a big problem with this, right? There's always some...
Depends where you are.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
But I think it's important that devotees establish businesses and can accommodate other devotees. That may not happen immediately, but that should. That's one solution, a long-term solution. If you work for a devotee, then he will not bother you usually, if he's a good devotee with these things. It's a challenge. I agree with you. And I was also, when I was an employee, there was some challenge also that and sometimes I also lost some work because of that. But I didn't care so much.
It's sort of part of detachment, part of letting go.
Well, I didn't have a family either, so as a brahmachari, I was working as a brahmachari also. So, what to do? It's not always easy. That's the thing, when you're employed, you're not allowed to say your opinion always. You kind of put a... So maybe you should look for someone who likes devotees a little bit. If people are really demons, it's not nice to work for them, right? If they're really, they just really don't like you as being a devotee. Then personally I would say, okay, it's not a good environment. So, Hare Krishna. It's the end of the class. I had a job where they told me directly that they said it's a problem. Hare Krishna. I said, okay, then I just leave.
Yeah.
It was very direct. They were not, it wasn't so, they said it straight out.
I think, you can see where it's better in the medium long term to kind of know that if it's like that, it's better to.
And if you come from the job interview, you come at you, it's very honest. They can see who you are, and if they have a problem, they immediately, you can see their face. For me, the good thing about that is, if they don't have a problem with that, you know immediately.
You don't see the duplicity from there as well. Yes.
Then it will be obvious.
Yeah.
And I had some experience with, I was managing kindergarten, alternative kindergarten education. And the alternative people, they were much more narrow-minded than the conventional kindergarten. That was quite interesting. They were very fanatic.
Yeah.
If you're not into our philosophy.
Yeah.
And then I went to a conventional, and they were even vegetarians. They were not necessarily so I went to an ordinary kindergarten. They were eating sausages, lots of meat every day, but they were very nice.
Yeah.
And they let me completely change the whole menu. So even the kids, they were bringing the lunchbox. They stopped bringing the lunchbox, and I started baking bread. The parents were so happy that they not to do it.
Wow.
And so that was, you don't expect sometimes. They're like really immediately, but very simple. They didn't make either. He said, maybe you can make your altar here. You can put the fish so that you can offer the food. So sometimes you get some surprise. You don't expect it.
Wow.
I think if you're a little courageous, then just be it at the moment. Be yourself. You will get rewarded. You have to be a little courageous.
You've got to step out a little bit.
Yeah.
Safety,
Don't be afraid of it. Krishna is
Wow. Thank you, Prabhu. Really inspirational and also practical. Thank you.
Yeah.
That's really powerful.
I mean, myself, my nature is not to be independent. Most people are employed. If you have that nature, being able to be independent,
Yeah.
but if you don't have it, at least find nice people. Best thing is you can find devotees and work for them.
I sort of see also sometimes that always isn't a good balance as well, depending on sometimes, the example you gave, sometimes people with potential generally nice people.
Yeah,
Who
there
may,
are lots of nice
who may,
people out there.
yeah, who may not be so strict, but you can kind of influence.
At least if they can accept you.
Yeah.
And maybe you can even talk about Krishna sometimes. But at least they don't feel some,
Yeah.
there's no bad feelings.
There's no kind of, yeah, kind of resistance.
It's horrible to be in a workplace where they kind of, they know that you are Krishna and have a problem. I had some jobs like that. I didn't feel like it.
Changes your mood, your consciousness.
Yeah. I mean, there's always someone, grumpy, that's alright. But if the leader is, at least the leader, if he's good, then there's some grumpy people. It doesn't matter.
Yeah. John, please enter. Hare Krishna, thank you so much for
From London?
yes. Down here for a week. We came in a group. School of about 6, 7 weeks ago. We decided so amazing in my thought that we have to come.
You haven't been here?
No, so we came about 6, 7 weeks ago.
Oh, you came?
First time. We came in a larger group as a coach.
Oh, yeah. I think I gave the class at the same time.
Ah, see,
Just when I remember one family. He was here.
Yes.
You were there with him as well.
Prabhu was here as well. No one had to be in the school of Bhakti. I thought you were here.
With the big group. I was supposed
You were
to
supposed to come, you didn't come.
I came just after that, the week after that. On Thursday, Akshaya Tritiya, around the second Tritiya. And you gave a class.
Yeah, I remember.
I covered myself this time.
Oh, you came on
Yeah.
my car.
No, I just I played them.
It's quite cheap, isn't it?
I thought it was. It's funny, within a couple of days, prices started going up. So when I booked it a few weeks ago, it was quite cheap. It was, when I first went, it was about a month ago. It was £60 return, basic, no add-ons. Then it jumped up.
Luggage.
Yeah, you need some. By the time you go home, it's still good. Basically 100.
Like Ryanair.
Yeah. They charge you for every group. But you can say duplicity. Duplicity and economic.
Yeah, and this one he's joking about, he calls it Ryanair. But it's not Ryanair, it's just the opposite.
Yeah.
If your luggage is a little too tall, they will refuse
Yeah.
sometimes.
They have a kind of frame, they put in the frame. It is thicker, it is like wider, it is taller. You have to pay, like, I don't know, 35 euros.
I checked this time, nobody asked. But I know in the past they checked. But I was applying anyway. They were very strict. But even with, there was also a lot of rudeness as well. That policy, how you say, leadership kind of dictates if you have that kind of attitude.
It's a food company.
Yeah.
What can you expect?
Because there was a French or Spanish ordinary passenger next to us. And the air stewardess, she was discriminating against him because he had a rucksack in the cabin. He had done a similar rucksack on the floor. It was quite large. She assumed he only paid for one bag. But he hadn't, so he had to explain. She didn't ask him in a nice way. She kind of just made an assumption. Your bag should be in the cabin. And if you've already got a bag in the cabin, I need to make space for everybody else. So, you get a bit of that.
Better companies, they don't.
I don't care. Or if they ask, they'll ask in a nicer way. They'll have a culture of checking and maybe not being so judgmental. This is a material world, as you said, love and hate.
Yeah, but that's really, I think that's really the bottom of the
Of the ladder.
companies that
Yeah.
don't exist.
Yeah.
We wanted to come. It was not planned earlier.
No
We
problem.
have this anniversary of one of our
Yeah, yeah.
you know. So
That's great.
we have to
Next
maybe,
time.
but next time, yeah, because in a month or maybe
Coming
came out
back.
twice.
You're coming back.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we were here in the beginning of the May, we are here in the end of the May. So especially during summer, it's like to
Yeah, as long as we know 1 or 2 days before.
yeah.
No,
Hope you did not have
no, no.
you did not like the whole book and then
No. I mean, my wife is always cooking for so many people, even though we're just 3 fish. So you can come anytime, and there will be a pot full of it.
Thank you.
Always so much.
So you have a kid?
Not yet.
You said you are only 3 people, so
Gaurahari, senior, he lives with us. Senior. That will be cute. Take some time.
yeah.
I just got married. So.
Yeah. She came after 5 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember in fact that we were also thinking to come this, you know, and on that weekend we were not we were not really like I didn't know so much, but anyway, during that weekend we were planning to come and then to Madhya or something because we wanted to see him also, and he was like in London somewhere. So then we came just a week after.
No problem.
Anyway, yeah, so we will keep on coming.
Yeah?
Like, you know.
Even we come spontaneously is okay.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.